program, start paying more attention to how we fuel our athletes, how we can support the program better, and ultimately win more medals. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Jacqueline Bertwistle, possibly one of the highest academic levels that we're going to have access to. Once she's gone through, there will be plenty of time for questions at the end, although to be aware that we will be planning another talk on the other side of Christmas that looks at more advanced nutrition as well from the senior athletes going on, or anybody who really wants to develop their education on the topic in that line. So, thank you.
Okay, can we hear me? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Pete. All right, so the title for tonight's presentation is Fueling Success, okay? And I'm a clinical and sports dietitian, so I have a foot in both camps, which is sometimes quite useful. My background, as I say, is in clinical and sport. My current position is a mixture, but I am consultant sports dietitian to the Royal Opera House with the Royal Ballet. So hence on the left you'll see a couple of dancers that you may recognise. We've got Sarah Lamb and Federico Bonelli, who Federico's moved on because he's now retired, and Sarah's still there, but she's coming to the end of her career, and she's now into her 40s. Those of you who go back a few years into rowing, I started off in rowing back in the 90s when a consultant psychiatrist, who also happened to be the lightweight rowing coach for Oxford, said, "Can you help me out? We've got to get these guys down to weight." And that was the start of my interest in rowing, so that was sort of mid-90s. So I then developed an expertise, if you like, and went on to work with the British rowing team. And I retired from the British rowing team just before Beijing in 2007 to have a family. So my experience of working with the British team is really to 2007, although I carried on working with British Rowing as a guest writer. So some of the stuff you may see might be in Rowing Regatta, or it could be online where you can download. Some of the stuff that I've written is actually free still, online, digital. So here we have, I don't know whether people can recognise any of these people up there on the three rowers. Yeah, so we have the men's 8, bottom left, who won gold in Sydney, and I had the great pleasure to work with the men's 8 and their coach Martin McElroy. Somewhere next to Rowley, the Cox on the right, I think is Steve Trapmore, who's still much involved in British rowing as the men's senior coach. Up the top right, we've got Sir Steve Redgrave, Tim Foster, Cracknell, Matthew Pinson, and down at the bottom we have the great Catherine Granger and Kath Bishop, winning silver there in Athens, but she went on to get a gold obviously in London, and she collected another 4 silvers between Sydney and Rio. Okay, so that's a bit of background. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about for the next hour is sports nutrition. But it's a huge topic, an absolutely massive topic. So somebody kindly wrote a paper and looked at the curriculum of nutrition. And really, I'm just going to be discussing the areas in blue. So it's a basic nutrition concept. So this is revision, I'm hoping, for a lot of you guys, okay, particularly the 17 and 18-year-olds at the top. So this should be revision. I'll also do a little bit about performance nutrition, which is fueling for recovery, and some of the performance enhancement, which is about gradual improvements of habits, and maybe touch a little bit on supplements, just a touch on supplements on this session, maybe more in the future. The area in yellow is the food skills. That's your job, parents, okay, to work with your children to work on these habits, because by the time they leave you, age 18, they need to be able to look after themselves, plan food, shop, budget, cook, stop themselves getting food poisoning, and be really quite organised if they're going to take their careers further, or even if they're not, okay, if they're just going on to university to do their academic studies and perhaps not so much in sport. But that is your job. Okay, so fueling success, mind and body. Okay, so we're going to be looking at some of the challenges. I think the challenges you're going to be thinking of in your head, and you're thinking, oh goodness, what solutions are there? I'm going to be putting an emphasis on a balanced diet, and what does that really mean? Because we often bandy this term around balanced diet, but what does it actually mean for young athletes? I'm going to look a closer look at calcium-rich foods, and there's a good reason for that. I'm going to look at some iron-rich foods, equally a good reason for that. And I'm going to introduce a really unscientific concept which may help people when they get anxious or what do I eat, what's normal, what's on my plate. Just go, grow, glow, flow. So it's unscientific, but it's sometimes a way of remembering things. Oops, and I pressed the one that you told me not to press. And then I'm going to introduce the R's of recovery, which is a useful way of remembering recovery. And then, it should say, introduce the 3 P's of snacks. Okay, so the value of sports strategies for senior rowers. So the junior rowers here is slightly different. So this has come from the Australian Institute of Sport. The majority of sports performance will come in the basic foundation of a good, solid training diet, okay, and for development. About 5 to 10% of performance success may come from things like sports drinks, such as the electrolyte drinks, or perhaps the recovery drinks, some of the sports bars, and so on. So actually a very much smaller percentage. And right at the top, at the senior level, and we're talking 18 and above, there may be a small ergogenic effect, performance enhancing effect. Now, people often think that sports nutrition is about the top 1 to 3%. And maybe it is when you are, perhaps in your mid-20s and you're trying to maintain your status as the best in the world. But when you are growing and still developing and trying to put in the work early on, then actually it's the foundation of a good, solid diet. Okay. So when I look at the statement of sports nutrition for the adolescent athlete, basically it says focus on foods and not supplements, okay? And I'll come back perhaps to supplements and what I mean by that, because there's no sort of precise definition. But I think we know what that means in terms of, artificial sort of foods, vitamins, minerals, things like creatine and stuff like that. That actually, at this age, it should be core foods rather than supplements. Okay, so what can a good training diet do for me? Okay, to get success, you need to train hard, you need to be consistent, and you need to recover and get up and do it all over again, week in, week out. And that comes with a very sound diet, a nutrition strategy, and that will enhance your ability to recover and train consistently. So you'll recover well before the next session, so mentally you should be up for it. So, some of the aspects of a general diet is for your brain nutrition, and sleep. Sleep's also important at everybody's age, but particularly your age, guys, between sort of 12 and 18. And the physical recovery of things like bone, tendons, ligaments, muscle glycogen, red blood cells, all of those have got to be recovered as well. We often forget about that and just thinking it's about muscle. There's a whole load of your other musculoskeletal system that needs a recovery. Okay, it will also help you keep yourself in shape for your sport to be the best version of you as determined by your genetics and your ability to train and respond. It will help keep you on the right side of fatigue. Okay, so all athletes get tired, okay? That's part of what you do. But it's knowing how tired you really are, and there's tired and there's profound tiredness, can't get up in the morning, and they're not responding to the training efforts that are put in place by your coach and your own goals. So that's, it's keeping you on the right side of fatigue. Okay, because we do want to fatigue you, we want to make you work hard, we want to make you sore so that you train, you adapt, and that soreness encourages biochemical reactions within your muscles and tendons and ligaments, which means they get stronger and they develop. And then your coach gives you more work and you get pain and you respond. And he gives you more work or she gives you more work, you get pain and you respond. And so it goes on. Sorry, but it does. Okay, greater resilience to illness, okay? We've all experienced a couple of years of that, but I'll come on to a nutrient that it's very important in the immune system. And a greater resilience against injuries, particularly bone. Stress fractures, rib stress fractures are not uncommon in rowers. Some of them may be due to the mechanical force that you have to put your body through, but you need a good musculoskeletal system. And so if your bones start to malfunction, then you start to stress fracture, you break, and then you have to take time out of your training program. Okay, I hate this picture. I put red all over it. And I don't know whether there's anyone in the audience from sort of a food, home economics, having to teach this, or PSHE. This is the best model we have, and that's why I've scribbled all over it, because I don't particularly like it, but it is the best model. We don't really have a good model for adolescents or children, and so I want you to ignore things that have been scrubbed out. Okay, so can I see hands up if you recognise this? Okay, so that's good. I used to do these a while ago, and it used to be like dust balls growing. Nobody has seen anything like this. That's good. Okay. So what we have here is this is the Eat Well Guide, formerly the plate model, and you might see it in Australia and as a pyramid, in Switzerland as a pyramid, and in the States as a sort of a plate as well. So you have got the food groups here, and food are put into groups for a specific reason. And the reason they're put into specific groups is because they have certain nutrients that they provide. Okay, so I want you to start thinking about food as being quite complex, not just that's where I get my carbs from. That. So food is more than just nutrients. Okay, so when you think about having a breakfast, you don't think, okay, I'm going to have some fibre with some carbohydrate, with a dash of potassium, a dash of calcium, with a bit of B vitamins, and I'll put some extra B12 on there, and then I've had my breakfast cereal with some Marmite on toast with a glass of orange juice. Okay, you think food, and then you might have to think nutrients. So it's a way of classifying food, and no one food group is more superior than the other. They are all important. You can't get all your 50-odd nutrients plus all the thousands of different colours from fruit and vegetables by just having one food group. What this also does is shows us the balance in terms of, okay, you should be having more sort of starchy carbohydrate-rich foods from your bread, potatoes, pasta and rice, because that's a good carbohydrate. But it will also provide B vitamins when you have some whole grain choices within that. You've also got plenty of fruits and vegetables on your plate through the day, and you've got some meat and alternatives to meat, such as chickpeas, lentils, eggs, fish, tofu, and so on. And so those protein-rich foods will also contain iron and chromium and zinc and all other nutrients. So we think of it as protein, but it also contains other nutrients as well. Then we have a milk and dairy alternatives, and I'm going to spend some time on that food group. And that's a good source of calcium and B vitamins, potassium and magnesium. And iodine, and I'll come back to that one. And then we have a small group which says oils and spreads. Actually, in the more modern versions around the world, that's perhaps a more prominent position, actually, so that you should be regularly including. It looks a bit of an afterthought on this picture. Actually, it is important to choose foods that are high in essential fats. So things like the vegetable oils and the vegetable spreads, perhaps. And you could argue things like nut butters and avocados can be used as spread, but for this purpose we put avocados in fruit and veg and nuts as an alternative to meat. Okay, let's see if this works. We've also, it says up there, you need to have some fluid. And I put question mark 6 to 8 glasses a day. That's just for the so-called average person, if that person exists. I expect you must get through a few litres of drink a day. Yeah? Yeah. Often it's a lot. And I'll show you a picture of somebody that sweats a lot and what that means. So, 6 to 8 is probably the minimum. And here we have at the bottom, we have the foods that are sort of biscuits, crisps, and I want you to think about those as fun foods. They're for enjoyment. They are a normal part of healthy eating, okay? One message I want you to get away from today is there's no such thing as a good food or a bad food. It's just food. There are good diets and there are bad diets in terms of the way you put it together. So if I looked at someone's meals over a whole week or a month, I could ascertain whether it was perhaps a good or a bad diet overall, but one meal, no. One day, no. Snapshot, no. So actually there are no such thing as good or bad foods, but within the food groups you can have better choices. Okay, so that's a key message. So enjoy some of these fun foods appropriately. They are there for social reasons and they can be part of normal healthy eating. Okay, so sometimes when I try and get people to remember things on a plate, I simplify things. So rather than saying, okay, I want you to have carbohydrates, okay, and this food group is the major source of carbohydrate, I would say go, okay? Then I would say grow, then glow, and then flow. Okay, very stupid, but actually it's just a very quick way of saying, on my plate, have I got go, grow, glow, flow for the main meals? So have I got some starchy carbohydrate on my plate? Have I got some vegetable or fruit on my plate? Have I got some protein on my plate? Have I remembered my grow calcium foods during the day? And have I remembered the flow? Okay, to help my muscles flow better. Okay, pretty basic. But go gives you energy, grow muscle, grow bone, glow makes you sparkle. Okay, very unscientific, but quite a good way of remembering things. Okay, so we've got carbohydrate in the bread, potatoes, pasta, rice group. Carbohydrate appears in all the food groups. Okay, so when people say, oh, I avoid carbs, well, that's quite severe actually, because that means they might be avoiding all the fruits and vegetables as well, because a lot of the fruits and vegetables will contain some carbohydrate. And some of the foods that are high in iron, such as beans and lentils and pulses, they are also a source of carbohydrate. And the milk and dairy are also a source of carbohydrate, as are the foods to enjoy. They are also a source of carbohydrate. Now, there are different types of carbohydrate, and I think that's what we're going to get into, perhaps more technical terms in another session. Okay, because you can get quite technical with carbohydrate. Okay, so here we have sort of a plate. Okay, so hopefully I've gone through the main points. A summary so far. No such thing as a good food or a bad food. No one food group provides everything. It's about a balance within the whole diet. Foods can be put into their main groups depending on the nutrients they provide. Thinking about the food group can help highlight actual or potential problems. So if I know that somebody avoids, not very good at fruits and vegetables, for example, I will know that their sources of vitamin C, perhaps potassium, perhaps folate or folic acid, folate, and other nutrients will be in jeopardy. If I think that somebody is not particularly having much of the milk and dairy, I'll be thinking, okay, what about their protein? What about their calcium? What about their potassium again? Maybe their B vitamins, riboflavin maybe. So it's a way of thinking about, if I avoid a certain food group, what other nutrients am I going to be struggling with? So it's a way of teaching, about assessing, and about thinking about nutritional issues. A main meal should involve all of those bits. Go, grow, glow, flow. Okay? And if you just reflect perhaps on a breakfast, so your go could be some breakfast cereal or some porridge oats. Your grow could be the milk on top of that. Your glow could be a glass of fruit juice or maybe some berries or something on top of that. And your flow could be some nut butter, or it could be a slice of toast with some spread on it. Okay, so there's all sorts of different combinations depending on choice. But as a guide, that's what it should look like, and your lunch and your evening meal. So missing out on a food group without medical supervision will lead to health and performance issues. It may not straight away, but it will do eventually. Now, when it comes to teenage, there's no exact portion prescription on calories or amounts of carbohydrate to meet exact requirements in teenage years. So I cannot stand here and say your child needs X calories or X grams of protein, or, with hand on heart. I could estimate, but I'd have to have a lot of background information. And nor should I teach that as a group message, because really what we're supposed to be teaching is, for your young women, is to give themselves permission to choose enjoyable food and in satisfying amounts. So whilst they are athletes, they are also growing young women as well. And it's about discipline to have regular and reliable meals and snacks, and to pay attention to what you eat. Okay, so the woman who's written this is someone called Ellen Satter, and if you're interested, go to the Ellen Satter Institute and have a look. Fascinating. She's been around for 30 years. She's an American registered dietitian, and I think I have occupational therapy as well, or certainly psychotherapy. And she teaches about the rules of how to feed children from birth through to teenage, and it's spot on, really. But it's about encouraging your children and you as athletes to understand your needs through enjoying food and understanding your appetite and your requirements, and having food presented to you by your parents or by yourself perhaps, and for you to eat it. Okay, so it's the parents' job to provide the right food. Okay, they are the providers, but ladies, you are the eaters. Okay, so there's a division of labor. Okay, and that's important, and it gets really tricky as you get older, because you want more autonomy, and I get that. But you have to think of yourselves as still growing and still with nutritional needs. Hence the reason why we have both the parents and the children, the rowers, in the same room together, which is great. Okay. Right, so thinking about why am I so fussed about milk and dairy? Okay. It provides calcium, okay? And calcium is vital for bones. No two ways about it, it's vital. Bones need a lot more other things than calcium, but calcium is a key ingredient. By the time you are 18, and some of you here may be 18, your skeleton is about 90% fixed, okay? You've reached most of your skeletal density, okay? It gets a little bit more dense into your 20s, but after that, you're holding on until your 50s. And then it's you hold on for the rest. Okay, and most of that, and 25% of that is achieved in your 2-year growth spurt. So some of you might be going through your growth spurt now. So calcium is key. You are building yourself a skeleton. That requires calcium. That's why it's so important. And hormones are involved with this as well, and I'll come back to that a little bit later. So it's 3 to 4 portions a day. Now, I said I wasn't going to be too strict on portions, but you can portion out milk and dairy. So a portion of milk is 1/3 of a pint, about 200 mils. And you need 3. So in other words, you need a pint of milk a day. Okay? Or equivalent. So if you don't have 1/3 of a pint of milk as one of your portions, you need to have a yogurt instead, or a matchbox-sized piece of cheese. Okay? They are the main sources of calcium. Okay, so you need about 3 or 4 during the day. Now, I'm going to talk about some alternatives, I think, now. Okay. Now, this might be controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway, okay? This is a great PowerPoint presentation, this PowerPoint picture. This comes from Asger Jørgendrup's website. He's a very experienced physiologist and scientist and nutritionist. Ultra endurance, and I think he's now, I don't know where he's based actually, Birmingham I think maybe, but yeah, so his website is an excellent source of scientific information with some practical input as well. So do not switch to almond milk. Do not switch to almond milk if you do not like or cannot drink cow's milk. Do not, okay? The protein content is too low. It's basically flavoured water, okay? Don't drink coconut milk either. And in fact, I shouldn't be calling them milk because they're not actually milks. If you look on the labels, and I'll show you some pictures, they have to be called milk alternatives or milk drinks or milk-like substances. They cannot be called milk because it's trade description. So cow's milk is about 8 to 9 grams in a glass. Soy milk is about 6. If you're going to choose one, perhaps choose soy. Okay, for those of you who prefer to drink non-cow's milk, then I would suggest you drink soy or one of the others I'm about to show you. Okay, so these are not milks. And check it out, it says so on the label. There is even one now out there that says this is not milk. Alpro have brought one out saying this is not milk. It isn't. So if you are going to find one, check the label, please, so that it's fortified with calcium, B12, vitamin D, and some other B vitamins, hopefully. Now, some of them are fortified with iodine, and I've put that in red because iodine is the forgotten nutrient, which is essential for women of your age if you're going to go on to have children. Okay, iodine is essential for the growth of the brain of a fetus in utero, and iodine is now being added into the multivitamins for women who are planning a pregnancy or are pregnant. But you need it, guys. You need iodine. It's involved in metabolism and all sorts. But not all of these cow's milk alternatives provide iodine. Some of them do. The Soya Original on the left does, but the Soya Organic doesn't. And the Soya No Added Sugars doesn't. Okay, so you have to be really wise of what you're finding. So look for the Soya Original. The Mighty Milkology, I think, does. The Oatly does. They don't add iodine as such, but they add iodized water to their ingredients, so that gives you a bit more iodine. The Alpro Growing Up drink milk does, but the almond, no sugars, doesn't. And those who are lactose intolerant, you can choose the lactose-free one, which is cow's milk, the lactose taken out. I actually contacted Arla to see whether it does contain iodine still, and they haven't got back to me. I'm pretty sure it would. The reason being is the way that milk is farmed means that cow's milk and fish are the only major sources of iodine in the British diet. If you go onto the vegan website, if you are vegan, you will see that they don't recommend seaweed because that's the other source of iodine. They will actually recommend supplements, okay, as a reliable source of iodine. So, ladies, drink cow's milk or choose your cow's milk alternative wisely to get all the nutrients that you need. Okay. All right. Now, vitamin D. Vitamin D I'm going to talk about because this is linked with bone health as well. Vitamin D has been popularised because of the coronavirus and the importance of the immune system. And it is. So not only is it involved in bone health and muscle strength, okay, important when you are in the weights room, it's also important for the immune system as well. It's a sunshine one, so you would have thought that athletes being outside, you guys being outside a lot, would be okay for vitamin D. But the reality is you often put splash tops on that cover your arms. You're often told to put sun cream on. You put a hat on, you put glasses on. No sunshine through that, no UVB through that. So we actually know that actually rowers are at risk of vitamin D deficiency. So if we look at the guidelines are out there and you can look them up, and it's advisable that everybody between the months of about October and April should take 400 international units of vitamin D each day. That's everybody here from the age of 1 should be taking vitamin D. Okay. They also recommend that if you are at risk, you take it throughout the year. And I would argue that you guys are at risk because of the research that we know on you. Now, is 400 international units enough? We don't know. Probably you need about 1,000. Possibly you need about 2,000 international units a day. But we don't fully know. And the only way we really know is by looking in your blood, which means a visit to the GP or perhaps one of the more reputable online blood-taking services that they're offered now. Otherwise, if you haven't got access to that, then to just take 1,000 international units a day. And one, I've not been sponsored by Better You, but this is a popular one because you can spray it in the side of your mouth and it's got a nice peppermint taste. You don't have to swallow a tablet or anything like that, and it's relatively cheap, easy to find. 1 squirt, 1,000. 2 squirts, 2,000. They've got a child one as well at 400 international units. On the right, again, from ASCO, is a summary of a research paper saying that basically more recent research on athletes is suggesting that vitamin D status should be nearer 75 rather than 50. So a result from your GP that maybe is around 40 to 50, they may say fine, but if you came and saw someone like myself or in a sports injury clinic with a sports physician, they would say, we want it nearer 75 for optimum bone health and muscle strength in particular. So it is a controversial one, but it's very important. And I do see lots of athletes with subclinical vitamin D problems. Okay, calcium is essential between the ages of 11 to 18. It's also for everybody, but 11 to 18. It's found in milk and alternative groups, which also contain protein and iron. Choose your dairy alternatives wisely. Check the label, particularly if you are vegan or do not eat fish. Check you are getting at least 400 international units a day, probably nearer 2,000 from a supplement, especially between the months of October and March, because that's when you start to store the vitamin in your fat. It's a fat-soluble vitamin. And what happens is you store it over the winter, and in the summer, you then use it. Hopefully, you will use it during the summer, and you will top it up in the summer because you're outside. So it's a constant intake and use. And because it's involved in numerous areas of the body, it's a hormone vitamin. It has a number of really key metabolic uses, which is why it's quite complicated to study, but you do need it. You do need about 1,000 to 2,000, I would say. Any concerns, speak to your GP or get a blood test. GPs probably wouldn't want to do this on a routine basis because it's costly, but they may, if you have suffered a stress fracture, I would argue that perhaps that would be a good case to get it tested. And I've never had a GP that have turned someone down if they have got a stress fracture. Okay, feeling tired all the time. Okay, it's not normal. Feeling tired is normal. Tired all the time is not normal. So you need to think about what might be going on. Am I hydrated? Is my iron store okay? So we're going to come on to iron in a moment. And iron is another one that's slightly different as athletes than for the general population. Again, if you had your blood tested by your GP, perhaps over 20 micrograms per litre ferritin, which is it's a marker of iron, which we use in sports medicine. Ideally, it should be more than 40. So again, if you go to the GP and the GP says, yeah, it's fine, just check. Okay, just have that conversation, just check. Because it may be that you are still low because you're growing and you have high iron losses. Does anyone want to know how you lose iron? Okay, because you should menstruate, you should have periods. Okay, you will lose iron that way. You will sweat, and in your sweat you lose a bit of iron. When you do your on the catch, you'll be squashing your body together, and you'll be destroying red blood cells. If you ever go on a run on a hard surface, you will be destroying red blood cells. So you are getting rid of iron all the time. So you have to replace it in your diet all the time. Okay, and some of you will be high iron absorbers and some of you won't, but you all need a certain amount of iron from your diet. And another issue that we've got to think about is, are you underfueling? Intentionally, because perhaps you are wanting to control your weight or your body shape, or unintentionally because you're too tired, perhaps having a few gut problems, can't keep up with it, trying to decide whether I'm going to do homework or whether I'm going to eat, maybe forgetting your packed lunch, or just not keeping up with the program in terms of, program gets upped, you need to eat more. Okay, I said I'd show you a nice picture. This is, I don't know if this is obvious, I think this, what was his name? I shouldn't say his name, but anyway, this was filmed in Cambridge Rowing Boathouse. I think on the right is Kieran West from the Men's 8. So can you see that pile of sweat under him? Okay, that was just on him for that probably came within half an hour actually. He was a massive sweater, and also a massive salt loser because he lost a lot of salt in that as well, because he just sweated so much. So can you see from the left to the right, there's a big pile of water under. I do know who it is now, yeah. And then on the right, there's also a little bit of sweat there, but not as much. So it's individual. And I expect some of you girls, and you will know who sweat a lot and who don't. And those of you, if you ever wear a black onesie, you will see the white sweat marks, salt marks. You are a big sweater. It's great. Olympic champion. Don't worry about it, but you've just got to be careful of your fluid status, and also perhaps salt as well. So it may be that you require a bit more salt in your diet. Okay. So it is individual. Okay, this is a bit technical, but basically as you exercise, you will sweat and you will lose fluid. You breathe, and the more heavy you breathe, the more water vapor you're going to lose. You lose fluid, your blood gets thicker, more viscous. Blood flows less easily. Breathe. The heart needs to work harder to circulate the blood. There is reduced nutrient transport to the muscles, to the working muscles. Fatigue is felt, metabolism is altered, and you get a drop in performance. So endurance is the one thing that really is noticed when you start to get dehydrated. Not so much strength, interestingly, but endurance. And rowing is a power endurance event. So, if you get dehydrated, it will start to affect you. And it starts to affect you around 2% of your body weight loss. Now, that's a bit technical. We might get into that in the next session. But it'd be around about, for most of you, about 1 kilo or more, depending on your body weight. Okay. I will also say that for the younger athletes here, it may be that you might find it difficult to sweat because you might have immature sweat glands. So you are still at risk of dehydration, probably even more, because you can't produce the copious amounts of sweat that some of the 18-year-olds, 17 and 18-year-olds can produce. You will get hot, but you won't be able to get rid of it. So you are more at risk, particularly in the summer months or if you're putting on lots of layers in the winter. Okay, so look at your pee colour, okay? Ideally, by the time it gets to number 4, you should be thinking, I need a drink, okay? If it's number 1, that's not so good because that's no colour in there. If it starts to look like number 7 or 8, and I have seen that, not in rowing, but another sport that I've worked in, then, you really need to start to drink. So you need to be training ready. So you all need to have your own drinks bottle, your own water bottle. You need to drink with meals and snacks. Reason being is because you'll retain more of the fluid by drinking with the meals and snacks. If you down a litre when you remember it, you'll pee out maybe half a litre. It just promotes the loss because water is actually a diuretic. Okay, caffeine gets blamed, but water is a diuretic. So if you actually drink water with your meals and snacks, you will retain more of that good fluid to help rehydrate you. Okay, so drink about 250 mils, which is a large glass before training, about 30 minutes. And if you pee beforehand, that's great. Okay, I know it's difficult, ladies, when you're in a onesie and you're fully hydrated. Okay, you know what I'm going to say. It's easier for men, let's just say, if you're on the water in the middle, halfway through an outing, and you've drunk too much, okay, so girls are at a disadvantage, and maybe one day they'll I don't know what, create a different onesie or something, and I don't know. But it's easier for guys to overdrink and get rid of it, but it's not so easy for girls. So women tend to get more dehydrated, and that can cause problems with endurance. So we just got to be aware of that. Practical, but real. Okay, so drink during training and check your PE colour. Okay, iron. You get iron from, best forms of iron are from meat, animal, heme, blood, okay? Now, I'm all for plant-based eating, or plant-focused eating, because we mustn't forget plants, fruits and vegetables and whole grains. They are important. Remember that balance, okay? But we have to think about iron at this age group. So iron losses are high in female athletes. Iron is vital for healthy blood to carry oxygen around the body, as well as other things that iron's involved in. And it also promotes strong hair, okay? So if you start to have weak hair, if your hair starts thinning, chances are it's iron, okay? Maybe a bit of protein as well, but iron. So we're looking at 2 to 3 portions a day, so probably at lunch, probably in the evening, unless you have a cooked breakfast. So a portion is about the palm of your hand, chicken breast, salmon, something like that, 3 large falafels, 2 tablespoons of hummus, half a big tin of tuna, about 100 grams or 90 grams drained weight, something like that. So it's your grow protein, grow iron, really important. Okay. Now, I've promoted the heme form because the gut likes that, and it will absorb the heme form much better from animals. But, you know, we are omnivorous by design, probably, and so we can include plant foods that should be well absorbed if we look after them and present the gut with enough. So you've got heme from red meat, oily fish, chicken thigh, tuna, white meat, white fish, in that order of iron concentration. And then the non-heme, which is mostly plant, but includes eggs on this as well, which is an interesting one, but eggs are on the right. So things like fortified breakfast cereals, so Cheerios, Special K, Weetabix, those kind of breakfast cereal. They will be fortified with iron as well as other B vitamins. Mueslis and porridge oats will also be a source of iron, but they won't be fortified. So they're still good, but fortified will have more iron in than the regular breakfast cereal. Things like baked beans and pulses, nuts, dried fruits, spinach, tofu, wholemeal bread, eggs, and other. And it's kind of in that order. Now, the way to enhance the absorption of the plant iron is to add some vitamin C to it. So maybe, as on the picture, have a glass of orange juice with your breakfast cereal. That will enhance the absorption of iron. Maybe if you have a jacket potato, which those of you who know a bit about nutrition will have some vitamin C in it, with your baked beans, you've got vitamin C and baked beans. That's great. You've got the combination. Maybe you'll have an egg with some spinach and some tomato. So you've got a mixture of tomatoes, vitamin C, and omelette or egg at breakfast. Okay, so peas are great because they're a good source of vitamin C and they're also a source of iron too. Spinach, okay, it's not magic. It really isn't magic. It does contain iron, but you need to have a heck of a lot of it because it competes at the gut. Okay, it's got factors in it that are kind of anti-iron, if you like, so it stops the iron being absorbed properly. So people think spinach and think vegetables, but actually there's some ingredients, some plant-based chemicals in there naturally that stop it being absorbed, perhaps as well as those on the left. But really, but both, but you just got to be more, you have to pay attention to it more if you are vegetarian or vegan. Okay. Relative energy deficiency in sport. This is a hot topic in sports medicine. And now I've told you about it, you'll see it everywhere. It's commonly called REDS. And Nikki Keir is a leading kind of endocrinologist who's looking at this, and pretty much all sports are interested in this. So basically, it's mismatch of energy or food taken in by athletes for the demands of the physical exercise that they are doing and the metabolic requirements of the body, so all the repair as well. So it's the total energy requirements? And is there enough energy available for the body to do what it needs to do? Because if it doesn't, low energy availability forces the body to trigger really profound hormonal responses that adversely affects every single aspect of the body, and eventually can have really negative consequences. Sorry to be a bit of a downer, but it's a real thing, and it can start in teenage years and continue, and it can have effects when they mature into their 20s, which is what we sometimes see in senior sports. Okay, so I can liken it to, if you think about your mobile phone, okay? Your mobile phone's running on full battery, okay? You are the mobile phone. You've got full battery use. And then at some stage in the day, maybe, particularly if you've got a phone like mine, it will say, low battery, you're running on low, do you want to switch to low battery mode? And you have a decision to go yes or no. So if you switch to yes, what that does is it means that you can still make emergency phone calls, you can still perhaps go onto Google, you can still do some of the things, but the apps aren't updating in the background. Does that make sense? So if we liken that to your body, it's like the body going, right, I'm going to do the essential functions here, but I'm going to stop all the other bits working properly. And the other bits are crucial to growth and development and training effect. So it may be that you feel fine-ish, you might have some subtle signs that I'll show you, but if allowed to continue, that can have really profound effects. So what do? You have to basically eat more, provide more fuel for your body and your brain, because your brain can start to get affected, particularly your mood and your anxiety status. And get sort of irritable. And I know teen years can be irritable. I have a teenage daughter, 2 teenagers, pretty much myself, and so there's irritability going around the house. But it's more than that. It's more than that. Or you use your phone less. In other words, you just fall asleep and have to conserve energy, so you do less, and everything starts to slow down. Okay. So basically, this is a picture. Again from Nikki Kiev, I think it's from the British Journal of Sports Medicine, looking at underfueling. So every aspect of the body can be affected, particularly things like gastrointestinal, so you can start to get things like bloating, constipation, maybe a bit of diarrhea, but often constipated. So people start complaining of being bloated. Now, on their own, they could be anything. They could be hormonal, it could be I've eaten a big meal, it could be, but when you put certain things together, you can get a picture of what's going on with an athlete. So you've got, perhaps they keep coming down with coughs and colds, maybe their period's a bit erratic, maybe they've stopped for 3 months. If they stop for 3 months, that's a flag. That is a big flag, because that's a thing that the body isn't getting enough fuel. Bone health, that's quite the end, but that's when you might get stress fractures. Growth and development, you get stunted growth. Psychological, anxiety, and irritability, and other things. Cardiovascular, the body has to work harder and is put under pressure, and so on. So that's from a health point of view. The coaches will be interested in the performance side of things as well as the health, I'm sure. But it'd be sort of increased injury, decreased training response, impaired judgment. You may not be listening to your coach or the cox as well, because you can't take instructions that clearly. Decreased coordination, more irritable, decreased concentration, decreased glycogen stores, which are the stores of carbohydrate in the muscle. They start to get low and will have an effect. Decreased muscle strength. Now, initially, when this happens, and by the way, there doesn't need to be weight loss for this to happen. In fact, most of the time, there may not be any weight loss or very little weight loss at all, because the body adapts, and it adapts by shutting down a lot of these functions. Okay, so this is not necessarily about weight loss, this is about underfueling. But weight loss can happen as well. Okay. So, summary, fluid needs are individual. Okay? Weight loss through dehydration will affect performance. So 2% or more starts to impact. So you try and stay on top of your fluids where best you can, ladies. Remind yourself and remind others to drink. Check your pee. High iron losses are prevalent in female athletes. An iron-rich diet is essential, so that's the meat and alternatives group. So remember your beans, nuts, as well as your meat, but includes things like breakfast cereal, green veg, and some vitamin C foods. One food I didn't say was, if you drink, I would not advise a perhaps a vegetarian or a vegan to drink cups of tea with their meals because it impairs the absorption of iron. So they would be drinking water or maybe some fruit juice instead. But meat eaters can get away with tea. Vegans and vegetarians, tea and coffee in between meals. RED-S is real. Chronic underfueling can be unintentional. Okay, it really can be, just forgetting to eat, not enough to eat, not time to eat, don't know how to eat, not prepared to eat. Or it could be intentional, but the effects are the same on the body. Okay, so just pulling that up, your Eat Well guide. Oh my goodness, right. Body is in a constant state of being broken down. Muscle damage will need particular care. Immediately after exercise, the body is most receptive to being offered nutrients for repair. Often after exercise, appetite may be altered, and your rate of recovery depends on what you eat, when you eat, and what nutrients are supplied to the body. The 5 R's, I said we'll get there. Some people it's 3, some it's 4, but basically, if you can remember, rehydrate, refuel, rebuild, repair, and maybe reduce soreness. This comes from an infographic I did for ballet dancers because they finish at 10 o'clock at night and they do suffer a lot from muscle soreness, and we use tart cherry. That's a supplement and they're all over the age of 18. But it's a useful one for them because it provides some of the nutrients for help with inflammation. So we have fluids, fuel, protein and repair. So fruits and vegetables and protein, they can both be involved. So when your coach starts saying, where's your 3 R's or your 4 R's, your rehydrate, refuel, repair. Rehydrate, refuel, rebuild. That's what is meant by. Now, this looks horrible, but you can have this as a handout. There's a handout for you. This actually comes from an article I wrote back in March 2014, but actually got revamped in 2019 online by Rowan and Regatta, and you can download it for free, I believe. Well, it says you can, so I believe you can, on this. So this was sort of a meal plan for a 65-kilo rower, weight training once in the afternoon. And what you've got here is the suggested meals and drinks on one side and the rationale of why they've been chosen on the other. So this is not fluke, but you just got to remember go, grow, glow, flow, and it kind of works. You don't have to know all the different nutrients, but I put it there because it was an article. Okay, so here we got like a large bowl of breakfast cereal, perhaps a bit of honey on there to taste with your wholemeal toast or some peanut butter, a glass of orange juice and some water. Mid-morning snack was a banana and a cereal bar, perhaps some popcorn. Lunch was a pita pocket filled with some avocado, so you've got some glow in there, but you've also got some flow from the fat. You've got some salad, you've got eggs or tinned salmon or kidney beans or some shredded chicken. You've got your low-fat yogurt, so that ticks the calcium box, it also ticks the protein box. Or it could be an out-pro dessert for the milk alternatives. Another piece of fruit. In the afternoon, perhaps a currant bun or some malt loaf with some low-fat spread. Coming off after the weight training, this was sort of knocking back. This was quite a large amount of chocolate milk, but you can vary it from about 250 to up to 500 if it's more of a meal. Some of your requirements will be higher and you'd want a whole bottle. Some might be smaller. And then in supper time, it's sort of a glass of low-fat milk, which could be a hot chocolate, and a bit of raisin toast with a sliced banana. And that's it. And that would be for a 65-kilo female athlete training once a day, teenage athlete. Okay, the 3 Ps, portable snacks. Planned, portable, and for purpose. Okay, they don't just happen. You have to plan these to happen. So these are my popular snack food items, okay? Total yogurt, total Fage, because you've got 5%, 2%, 0%, okay? Weight Trays and Ocado, I think Sainsbury's used to do 2%. It sort of disappeared recently, but 5%, 2%, 0%. Retains all the calcium, all the protein. Trail mix, raisin bread for raisin toast. Get Buzzing. Is this school nut-free? Okay, yeah, it is nut-free. Okay, so Get Buzzing are a good brand because they are nut-free, completely nut-free. They are marketed as nut-free, and they have high protein, high carbohydrate snack bars, and they also have reasonably good protein and high energy snack bars as well, and they're tasty and they're reasonably priced in bulk. You've also got things like bagels that's got Biscoff on it, but you could also put nut butter or wow butter, which is what Get Buzzing use, which is a peanut butter alternative that you can get on Amazon. So it looks like peanut butter, tastes like peanut butter, but there's not a peanut inside. Okay, but walnuts, whatever, away from school then, other nuts. Okay, you got regular chocolate milk on the left, Alpro chocolate milk in the middle, which comes in handy 250 portion sizes and packs of 3, long life. And then you've got Huel, which is a vegan alternative on the right, which can be useful. You've got oat biscuits like Naans, which are low sugar, malt loaf, and popcorn. Okay, these are all good snacks. They've all got value. Then I went to Sainsbury's this week and decided to go mad. I think there was a question on, okay, what do I do for lunch? So I went mad and just took a few pictures. Okay, Belvita are very popular, either as snacks, maybe as a breakfast. It's a bit too small for breakfast, but as a useful snack. And then you've got Nens again. These, I think, are great. And there was a question about what to do at lunches. Do you have access to a microwave, senior girls? You shaking your head, right? I think start a petition or something. Good. Okay. All right. You might make it two. One for when it's okay. Make it industrial strength. Okay. But these are really good. These are vegan, but they are fantastic. They're quick, they're nourishing, they're tasty, which is important, and they come in different flavours. And they're not that expensive either. You can get them from Aldi's for about £1.99, Tesco for £2 on your club card, and Sainsbury's about £2.50 to £3. Okay. Other snack meals, the good old toast with avocado and a smashed egg kind of thing. That's great because you've got the wholemeal bread carbohydrate, you've got the fats and the colour, and you've got the protein on top. Banana oat smoothie, fantastic. Milk or milk alternative, throw in a banana, throw in some oats, maybe a bit of honey if it's not sweet enough. Great, fantastic. Omelettes, these are another good ones for you guys if you're struggling for lunch. They don't have to make their omelettes, parents. They can get them. They're a bit more expensive, but you can get mini ones and you can get big ones. £3.75 from Sainsbury's this week. And so, you just zap them in the microwave for 2 or 3 minutes and that's great. Put it with a bread roll and maybe a bit of salad or a carrot or something because you have your glow. So, just bring a carrot in or something. And on the right, you've got some of the better meals. Some of these cooked chill meals now are pretty good. Okay? And so, again, they vary in price, but they're pretty good. You've got bowl pots, and you can see how popular they are because they're on special. They've gone, they're quite useful. Some of them are a bit taste-wise, but some of them are okay. And they're useful as a sort of a snack meal. Not a meal, not a snack kind of in between, or you have to add things to it to make it more of a meal. And on the right, you have, again, a fantastic one. We've got Merchant Gourmet, or Sainsbury's own, Waitrose own, Jamie Oliver's, pre-cooked. You basically heat them in the microwave or not. And you can put them with a salad, you can put them with a dollop of hummus or an egg and bring them in a packed lunch bag. Or you can heat them up and add some curry to it. You could add more rice to the one-pot things if you wanted to. So these are very good. And great way to get whole grains and variety with seeds and things like pumpkin seeds and quinoa and things like that. Really good sources of nutrition. Then you've got the sort of quick cook pasta on the left. Again, might be something for home if you want to pour some, get some hot water and put that on. And then these kind of things are appearing as an alternative to sandwich. Now this chicken big bio from Itsu, priced £2.50 from Sainsbury's. You put in the microwave and it gives you about 50 grams of carbohydrate and about 20 grams of protein, which is a good dollop of nutrition. And it's quite good. So that's another option if you get a microwave. All right. In the Rona Regatta, there are some recipes that are still online, and there's one here for pancakes. There's a cottage cheese and pear and banana. I linked in with the chef from British Rowing, and the fancy ones are his and the basic ones are mine, but they are still online. You have to look hard and Google on the Rowing website. Okay, so thank you. So things to think about. What things that you might need to change moving away from here. Find out what balance really means for you. Pay attention to calcium, pay attention to iron. Remember Go, Grow, Go, Flow for your main meals. Remember the R's for recovery. And remember the 3 P's of snacking. Okay, so I'll end it there. There might be some questions, a few minutes for questions.
So all of that's been recorded and can be sent out. As I mentioned before, there will be another talk a bit later in the year that looks at more advanced nutrition. But we have about 20 minutes for questions. So if you'd like to ask anything right now, fire away.
That's a really good question, okay? Because I know that some of you will perhaps be on a multivitamin, which is fine, you know, for insurance policy. You've got to be very careful when you double up, okay? There is a toxic level for vitamin D. I suspect you wouldn't go over it by having an additional vitamin D supplement on top, but check your multivitamin, and it will tell you 400 or 800 or 1,000 or 100%. If it says 100%, it will be about 400 international units. You could add on another 1,000. So you could take more. But if your child's been taking it regularly, like that, it may be that that's enough for them. Okay, particularly if you enjoy sort of summer holidays, or, you know, they may go out in the sunshine without sun cream on for perhaps about 15 minutes a day during the summer. So it might be enough, but it might not be. Yeah.
Question, low fat versus full fat yogurt from milk and things like that. I've always gone full fat.
Yeah.
So what's your reasoning for the low fat option?
Okay. So if people heard that, so I actually put the full fat total Faye up there, so which is 5%. I think it's personal taste, to be honest, and it will depend on energy requirements as well. I find that when people use the 5%, because of the combination of the lactose sugars, which are naturally within the milk product, and the fat gives it a mouth texture, which means you don't often have to add too much to it to get the taste. Does that make sense? So you can just add berries to it and you get that taste. Whereas if you have 0%, you're probably more likely to add sweet stuff to it, or perhaps peanut butter or almond butter to it to get that textural. That's what I find personally, and with working with athletes. So I don't think it matters, because if it's 0%, most athletes then add almond butter or peanut butter anyway. And if it's the 5% or higher, they tend not to add as much of the fat, but they may add a bit more honey maybe, but they'll add fruit or seeds. So it's quite interesting. But, you know, I tend not to promote 0% yogurts. It will be low fat, I don't mind, which is about 3%. So Activia, regular Activia is about 3% fat, 3 grams per 100 grams. Faye is 5 grams. Proper Greek yogurt is about 10, well, it's proper Greek yogurt, but higher Greek yogurts could be about 10 or 12 grams per 100, which when I worked in British rowing, absolutely yes, because you're talking 100-kilo guys, and they would put walnuts on and drizzle honey too. So it depends on energy requirements as well. Yeah.
Really interesting talk, thank you. I'll ask 2 questions. One is that one of the problems with about diets is that there's information about how much we need nutrients. So you made some very interesting points today, giving some visuals of how we think about it. But I'm interested if you have any recommendations on the sources of information. What might be a good amount of some of the things you mentioned,
Yeah.
i.e. calcium, but perhaps something else as well, some of the vitamins, macronutrients,
Mm.
how we might think about giving sources.
Yeah.
And then just one other, before I talk about what have you, is it was a very interesting point about it's impossible And I'm just interested in getting a little bit more on how good the evidence is that in a particular benefit, eating off exercise rather than, for example, maybe eating all day or the next day.
Okay, so thinking about sources of information, really difficult, really tricky, particularly nowadays. If you're looking for a good, first of all, I would always say you've got to, you need to look for somebody that's got either RD at the end of the article, which is registered dietitian, or SENR, which is Sports and Exercise Nutrition Register, or a registered nutritionist. Okay, it's registered dietitian is a protected title. The others aren't. So you can still get good and bad dietitians who may or may not know their stuff, but at least you've got a legal qualification to talk about nutrition. So I would suggest, but I know that in Rowing and Regatta they used to call me nutritionist, but it's like, okay. But I signed it RD, I think. So that's the first thing, to look for that. And that RD is throughout the world. So that will be Australia and America and in Europe as well. Nutritionist, in this country, there's a voluntary register. In the rest of the world, it's whatever. Okay, it could be a weekend course, or it could be a 4-year degree, but we don't know. That's the problem. So that's the first thing. Always try and find good who's written it. In terms of good websites, I like Asker Jørgendrup from a scientific point of view, and he's quite practical as well. If you Google Asker JEUK, and then you'll come up with his website. The Australian Institute of Sport has some good stuff. The UK Sport. So I would go for the government and lottery-funded titles. In terms of books, Anita Bean, who's a registered nutritionist with a huge experience in sports nutrition, she's done some really great books. I think I brought it, actually. So I knew somebody would ask me this. I keep a lookout on things. I mean, this is quite a good practical one, which is Runner's World, the new complete guide to nutrition. It's not perfect. There's a few chapters in there that make you cringe, and some of the language is a bit like, but it's okay, and that's the problem. You know, it's got to have an overall editor. But that's quite practical. It's got some good recipes, practical advice, bit of science. It's a bit kind of boost your brain and help you this, and it's a bit pseudoscience, but actually if it makes people choose certain foods, that's okay-ish, I think. So that one's quite good. Okay, on the topic of, what was this second bit? It was, after, yeah. Okay, yeah. So the moment you stop exercising, you start recovering. So the moment you stopped in your boat, girls, the body started to try and recover. And so what you eat and drink after coming off the water, coming out of the gym, is important. So delaying that, you could delay it for about an hour, providing you went home and had, a good meal, or at least a good snack followed by a meal. But the longer you leave it, the more likelihood you are not going to repair properly or rebuild. So it's rehydrate, rebuild. So rehydrate, refuel, rebuild, repair, reduce soreness. So you just delay it. And then you might lose your appetite anyway because you're so tired. So there is some good scientific evidence about the speed. And I'm not saying the moment you stop, you start, but some will say within half an hour. I'm a bit more generous, but within half an hour you should start the recovery, refueling process. Yeah. You've just got to put it all in. I don't think any one meal is more important than the other, particularly with, I'm going to be careful what I say here. Okay, so they're all important. For women who are struggling with their menstrual cycle, if it's a bit more erratic, or if it reduces, there's some interesting work looking at what's eaten at the beginning of the day. So if somebody goes out and exercises before breakfast and then doesn't really eat till later, it's more likely to have, it seems to have more of an effect on the menstrual cycle in a negative way on the whole. So eating earlier seems to be better. Certainly eating earlier, having sources of iron in the morning seems to be better because there's something that prevents iron being absorbed perhaps later on in the day. So actually breakfast becomes an important one. But it's all important. You know, I also work with, you know, ballet dancers that start later, but they finish, you know, so they have their evening meal at 10:30 at night. And no one really has accused anyone from the Royal Ballet of being overweight, for example. But they have to do it that way. So it depends on the sport. You guys, on the whole, are out on the water early, or traditionally you're out early. So that may be a small breakfast, or maybe not breakfast, but you then have your first breakfast and maybe a second breakfast. So it depends. But with women, you've got to be careful of the menstrual cycle by delaying early food. Okay, yeah. 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 So what you eat the night before and what you've eaten the day before will help, because that will put the energy into your muscles. So that will definitely help. And what you're doing at breakfast is just topping up your stores, offsetting hunger, so you're not halfway through an outing thinking, God, I'm starving, can't concentrate. So it's just something, if you can't manage your breakfast, to top you up. So it's something. So it could be a Belvita and a bit of water, or it could be, you know, a banana and just a yogurt, or a smoothie, okay? But what you then have to remember is that you might be down fuel by mid-morning. So mid-morning becomes your important time to catch up at school, and then at lunchtime. Otherwise, you're playing catch-up, which might happen, and then you just end up having a big evening meal. But from a sports nutrition way, it's better to put it in throughout. Okay, so, yeah, do the best you can in the mornings.
To do with hydration, what do you do if your P is a 1 on the chart?
It's a 1.
It's over fast.
Okay, you're overhydrated.
But how do you, what do you do to make it better?
Drink less. Drink less. Okay? Or no, okay, that might be a bit flippant. Okay, so it may be that you are drinking too much. Okay? But if you're somebody that's sweating a lot, it may be that you need to add a bit more salt to your food, or you need to drink your fluids with your food to see if that helps retention. But if you know, it shouldn't be completely clear, and you shouldn't be constantly going, because it's not inside you then. You know, there's no point of drinking all that if it's coming straight out, because it's flushing things out of you. So either, you know, it might be worth recording what you're doing and just seeing. But it may be that and that's why, you know, sports nutrition, it doesn't have to be low sugar, low salt. Okay, it's some sugars, added sugars for palatability and increase of carbohydrate, and some salt it's a lot more for some people, which could be through food or it could be through drinks. Yeah. No, but as long as you're sweating, if you're sweating, that's fine. Everybody is different. And it may be that you take a lot more to heat up and, you know, lose, and you're a bit more conservative. But I would be worried if you couldn't sweat, and that may be that you are dehydrated. If you were struggling, because you would start to feel really weird, and you would stop pretty quickly and feel really quite unwell. You know, I've seen sweat losses of 3 litres an hour in hot weather in Italy and Spain and places like that. I mean, you were talking sort of 30 to 40 degrees, but nevertheless, it's been vicious. So you have to stay on top, but yeah.
During the menstrual cycle,
Yeah. Yeah, good question, actually. Sometimes that's what I advise, because somebody's eye may be all right, but it's just a bit on the low side and they've got heavy periods. So it could be for that week, they may take, and I might actually have it on the next. No. There is a over-the-counter one, so it's behind-the-counter one that's quite good. It depends, but I would say get it checked if it was low. But you could actually have, you can get over-the-counter ones that are fairly low, that will be harmless. It's about 14 milligrams is the sort of what they reckon, 100%. So it'd be something like Ferroglobin or what's the other one, Floridex or Spa Water. But if there are genuine concerns that periods are heavy and someone's perhaps skin, nails, hair is looking a bit and they're tired all the time, can't get up in the mornings, going to bed on time, then get it checked, because it may be that you need prescribable iron in the right amount to bring it back up, and it can take about 3 months for that to happen. Yeah. I keep it up all the time, personally, because, yeah, it's easier to do it that way. I mean, you could pay more attention, but I'd want people to pay more attention all the time. But you could, you could say, right, in my week, I'm going to have red meat, and the rest of the time I'm going to have white meat or plant-based. I don't know. Okay, I think we're exhausted. Okay.
If you think of anything later, then you can always send me an email and I can try and find out the answer for you. But as I say, we'll be sending out this recording. Maybe available. Thank you so much for coming.